Hey guys, tonight we're going to drift back to a time when social embarrassment wasn't just a risk. It was a form of government minus approved punishment. Imagine a world where your minus screw minus ups, the kind of things that might get you an I minus roll today, could land you in the center of town as a public spectacle. It's a gentle reminder that, for all our modern anxieties, you probably have a very rough first day in the 16th century. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. Only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It helps the channel find other people who, like us, enjoy unwinding two tales of bizarre historical justice. And while you're at it, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The gentle whir of the fan begins to fade from your awareness. In its place, a different set of sounds slowly filters in. The distant bleating of a sheep, the rumble of a wooden cart over cobblestones, and the low murmur of a crowd. You open your eyes, not in your bed, but standing in the middle of a bustling, slightly muddy town square somewhere in what would one day be called Germany. The air is thick with the smell of damp earth, wood smoke, and baking bread. You're a musician, or at least, you're trying to be. The lute in your hands feels a little foreign, a little clumsy, but you need to earn a coin or two for dinner. So you find a spot near the fountain, clear your throat, and begin to play. The problem is, the music coming from your instrument is, well, it's not good. It's the kind of sound that makes dogs howl and babies cry. The notes don't just fail to harmonize. They seem to be in an open declaration of war against each other. A few passers-by grimace. A woman selling cabbages gives you a look that could curdle milk. You're not just bad. You're a public nuisance. This is a key point of life in this era. Society was built on order. And you, my friend, are creating auditory chaos. In a world without headphones or noise ordinances, your bad music is every honest problem. Before you can even finish your catastrophic second song, a stern minus-looking man with a chain of office around his neck approaches. H.E.S. the town bailiff. He doesn't say much. He just points at your lute and then points at you, a weary expression on his face. You've been caught, but you're not going to jail. Oh no, that's for real criminals. For you, they have something far more creative in mind. He leads you toward the town hall, where he retrieves a truly bizarre object. It's made of cold, heavy iron, shaped vaguely like a flute, but with a large, hinged collar at one end. This is the Schandflöte, the Shame Flute. This is the strange and wonderful centerpiece of your punishment. The Shame Flute wasn't an instrument of torture in the physical sense. It was an instrument of pure, unadulterated humiliation. The bailiff clamps the cold iron collar around your neck. It clicks shut with a dreadful finality. Then, he takes your hand and forces your fingers into a set of metal rings attached to the flute part of the device, locking you into the permanent pose of a musician. You can't play. You can't even lower your arms. You are now a living statue dedicated to the crime of being terrible at music. Why would they go to all this trouble? Historians still debate the precise reasoning behind targeting musicians this way. Some argue it was a simple matter of maintaining public peace, a form of extreme noise complaint enforcement. Others believe it had deeper roots, connected to the sacred idea of harmony. In a society deeply intertwined with religion, divine order was reflected in beautiful, harmonious music. Therefore, discordant, ugly music was seen as a small tear in the fabric of God's universe, a kind of moral failing that needed to be publicly corrected. And a more practical theory, it was likely a way for the official musicians' guilds to protect their monopoly and weed out unskilled, freelance competition like you. They lead you back to the center of the square and chain you to a post. There you stand, neck in a vice, fingers locked in their metallic prison. The afternoon wears on. Children point and giggle. Merchants and farmers stop to stare, some shaking their heads, others openly laughing. Your crime wasn't theft or violence. Your crime was simply being bad at your job. And in this world, That's enough to make you the town's leading attraction. The sun begins to dip lower, casting long shadows across the cobblestones. The weight of the iron seems to grow heavier with every passing hour. Your knot hurts, but your dignity is bleeding out, drop by painful drop, right here in front of everyone. For now, you just stand there, a silent, unwilling monument to a song badly played. The night air grows cold, and a stiff dampness settles into your bones. Sleep here is impossible, perched on a stool with your hands and neck locked in iron. But eventually, the first grey light of dawn spills over the rooftops, followed by the familiar sounds of the town waking up. A car trumbles past, a rooster crows with defiant pride, and soon, the bailiff reappears. He looks just as tired as you feel. With a clank and a groan of rusty metal, he unlocks the collar and the finger rings. Freedom. You stumble back, rubbing your neck, feeling the pins and needles rush back into your hands. The shame flute is unceremoniously hung back on its hook, and you are wordlessly dismissed. Your brief, disastrous career as a musician officially over. The crowd from yesterday has dispersed, already moving on to the day's new drummers. You are no longer the musician. That humiliation fades like a strange dream. Now, you are someone else entirely. You find yourself looking down from a second-story window of a handsome timber-framed house. The street below is narrow, bustling, and you have a perfect view of everything. This is your domain. You are the neighborhood watch, the local newspaper, and the chief intelligence officer, all rolled into one. Your currency isn't coin or grain. It's information. You know that the baker's wife bought a new lace cap that was far too expensive for their station. You saw the young weaver's apprentice sneaking a glance at the blacksmith's daughter. And you've made it your business to tell everyone that the butcher, good old Herr Schmidt, seems to be using a rather heavy thumb when he weighs his sausages. Your tongue is your greatest tool and your most dangerous weapon. A well-misplaced word from you, dropped like a pebble into the pond of public opinion, can create ripples that last for weeks. It's a position of power, in its own way. But power, as you're about to learn, invites scrutiny. Your comments about the butcher's thumb have made their way back to Herr Schmidt himself, who, being a large man with a formidable cleaver and a short temper, has made a formal complaint to the town council. Your words, Lucy, weren't just idle chat. They were an attack on his livelihood, his reputation, and in a small community where reputation is everything, that is a serious offense. It isn't long before you hear a heavy knock on your door. It's the bailiff. Again, he looks even more weary this time, as if dealing with the town's petty squabbles is a Sisyphean task. He holds in his hand another one of the town's peculiar inventions. It is not a fruit. This is a cage of cold iron, an intricate web of straps designed to fit over a human head. It looks like a monstrous piece of headgear, something a blacksmith might have designed in a nightmare. This is the Scold's Bridle, or as it's sometimes called, the Brank. He doesn't have to fight you. The authority he represents is absolute. You are seated, and the iron mask is fitted over your face. The straps are buckled tightly at the back of your head. It's heavy and cold against your skin. But the worst part, the truly diabolical element of its design, is a small, flat piece of iron, the bit or gag minus plate. This plate, sometimes smooth, sometimes covered in sharp spikes, is inserted into your mouth to press down firmly on your tongue. You can't speak, you can't shout, you can barely even hum. Your greatest tool has been neutralized. This is a punishment designed with laser-like precision for your specific crime, slander and gossip. While it was overwhelmingly used on women for nagging, scolding, or challenging their husband's authority, some records show it was occasionally used on men as well, for public drunkenness or blasphemy. It's a weirdly intimate punishment. The shame flute was absurd, but this feels personal. This is a direct assault on your voice. Historians still argue about the true legal standing of this bridle. In many places, it wasn't a formal punishment listed in the law books. Instead, it was a form of folk justice, a tool used by local parishes and town councils to enforce social conformity. Was it truly about stopping gossip, or was it a way to silence inconvenient or rebellious voices? particularly female ones, who dared to step outside their prescribed social roles. The debate continues in academic circles, questioning whether this was about maintaining peace or maintaining power. The bailiff leads you out of your house and into the street. Your own street, your neighbors, the very people you've been so keenly observing, now stop their work to stare at you. There's the baker's wife, her new cap seeming to mock you. There's the weaver's apprentice, who quickly looks away. You are paraded through the town, the iron cage a heavy, silent proclamation of your guilt. Some designs of the bridle even had a bell on top to draw more attention, ensuring maximum exposure. Yours is a simpler model, but no less effective. The low hum of disapproval from the crowd is more deafening than any shout. The ultimate irony is not lost on you, who lived by talking about others, are now the mute center of everyone's conversation, unable to offer a single word in your own defense. Your journey ends at the market cross, where you are chained for all to see, a silent, iron-minus mass testament to the dangers of a wagging tongue. The sun has crossed the sky, and your jaw aches from being held shut for so long. Once again, the town bailiff approaches, his face a mask of professional boredom. With a final, metallic groan, the Scold's bridle is removed. Your face is free, but the memory of the cold iron and the silent judgment of the crowd lingers. You slip away, melting back into the anonymity of the town. Your brave, loud-minus-mouthed career as a gossip now, just another fading echo in the cobblestone streets. The world dissolves into a blur of weary relief, and then it sharpens again. The air is different now. It's not the damp chill of the market square. It's warm, thick, and wonderfully fragrant. It smells of yeast, of toasted crust, of caramelized sugar. You are in a bakery, your own bakery. Your hands, no longer locked in iron rings or idle at a window, are covered in a fine dusting of flour. An immense brick oven radiates a comforting, deep heat that warms the whole room. This is your sanctuary and your trade. You are a master baker, a respected member of the town guild, and the creator of what is, usually, the town's most sought minus after bread. There is a deep, primal satisfaction in your work in taking the humble trinity of flour, water, and salt and, through fire and patience, transforming it into the very staff of life. This week, however, has been hard. A drought has driven up the price of grain, and firewood costs more than it did a month ago. Your profit margin, once as plump as your finest dinner rolls, is now as thin as a communion wafer. As you knead the dough for the morning bake, a tempting thought slithers into your mind. What if each loaf was just a little lighter? Not enough to be obvious, just a few grams missing. A small scoop of flour held back from each batch. No one would ever know. The poor widow who buys a single loaf to last 3 days. She wouldn't notice. The burly stonemason who buys 3 for his family. He's too busy to chat. It's a simple economic decision, a small adjustment to keep your business afloat. You convince yourself it isn't cheating. It's just prudent management. The next day, your bread is on the shelves, looking as golden and crusty as ever. But it is a lie, a delicious, fragrant lie, and that lie is about to be exposed. Around mid-minus morning, a procession arrives at your door. It's not the bailiff this time, but someone far more intimidating, the guildmaster, flanked by 2 other senior bakers. He isn't smiling. In his hands, he carries the guild's official brass balance scales, polished to a high sheen. Your heart sinks. An inspection. He says nothing, simply picks one of your loaves from the rack, places it on one side of the scale, and on the other, he places the official town loaf minus weight, a lamp of cold, unforgiving iron. The arm of the scale tips, and your loaf rises shamelessly into the air. It is underway. They test another, and another. The result is the same. The punishment for this is swift and public. Selling short minus weight bread was considered a profound betrayal of public trust. For this, there is a special ceremony, colloquially known as the baptism, the baker's baptism. It is exactly as ominous as it sounds. This is a classic example of a punishment fitting the crime. To combat this very accusation, Many bakers throughout history adopted the practice of the baker's dozen, giving 13 loaves for the price of 12. That extra loaf was a kind of insurance policy, a buffer to ensure that even with minor variations in baking, the total weight would never be found wanting. You, in your prudence, forgot the insurance. You are marched out of your bakery and toward the river that flows sluggishly at the edge of town. A crowd gathers, much larger and more boisterous than the one for the musician or the gossip. This is prime entertainment. At the riverbank is a large wooden contraption that looks like a giant seesaw. On one end is a seat, or in some towns, an iron cage. This is a cucking-stool, or ducking-stool, repurposed for your specific failure. You are strapped into the chair. It feels precarious, suspended over the murky green water. Historians debate the full meaning of this particular punishment. Was it simply about humiliation and deterrence, a public spectacle so embarrassing that no other baker would dare to cheat? Or was there a more symbolic, almost ritualistic element to it? The name baker's baptism suggests a kind of parody of a religious rite. Some scholars argue it was seen as a way to wash away the sin of greed, a forced purification that cleansed the baker and symbolically restored the community's trust. Others maintain it was just a practical, wet, and deeply unpleasant way to make a point. The guild master gives a signal. The heavy end of the beam is released, and your end, with you on it, plunges downwards. You hit the water with a shocking, icy splash. It's cold, it smells of mud and weeds, and it fills your nose and mouth. Before you can even register the shock, you are hoisted back into the air, dripping and sputtering, to the uproarious laughter of the entire town. Your beautiful flour-minus-dusted apron is now a soaking, muddy red. Then, down you go again, and again. Each plunge is a fresh wave of cold and shame. You are being baptized in your own failure, washed clean in the river of public ridicule, a soggy monument to the high price of a few grams of flour. The world comes back into focus not with a splash, but with a throbbing headache. The memory of the cold river water and the jeering crowd dissolves like sugar in rain. You are no longer a baker. The smell of yeast is gone, replaced by the sour, sticky minus sweet aroma of spilled ale and unwashed bodies. You're in a tavern. Or, more accurately, you've just been roughly shaken awake behind one. The morning sun is painfully bright, and your head feels like a drum being used for practice by a clumsy giant. You had a good time last night, a very good time. You sang, you gambled away the single coin in your pocket, and you toasted to the health of everyone and everything, from the king to the tavern cat. The problem is, the sun is now high in the sky. This is not the gentle dawn. This is the middle of the workday, while others are toiling in the fields, hammering at forges, or weaving at looms. You are nursing a monumental hangover in a pile of straw. You are an idler, a sluggard, in the meticulously structured world of this town. Your idleness is not just a personal failing. It's a form of theft. You are stealing time from the community, occupying space without contributing your share of labor. And your constant companion in this crime is the ale, the sweet, deceptive nectar that convinces you that work is something best done tomorrow. You're peaceful, if painful. Recuperation is interrupted by a prodding boot. It's the bailiff. Of course it is. He seems to have a sixth sense for finding people who are failing at life. He hauls you to your feet. You are not a criminal in the grand sense. You haven't stolen or harmed anyone. But you have violated the unspoken contract of this society. You have chosen indulgence over industry. For this, there is no dark prison cell. There is something far more cumbersome and far more visible. He leads you to the town's storehouse of public shame. A shed filled with iron masks, strange wooden contraptions, and other tools of social correction. He ignores the shame flute and the bridle. He walks past them and he FTS a large, impossibly awkward object off the floor. It is, for all intents and purposes, a barrel, a huge, heavy, wooden barrel, but with a large hole cut in the top for your head, and two smaller holes on the sides for your arms. This is the SCH and mantle, the cloak of shame, or more bluntly, the drunkard's cloak. The principle is simple. If you are going to act like a beast who lives only for the drink, they are going to make you look like a mindless beast of burden. The barrel is lowered over your head. It's heavy. The rough hewn wood scrapes against your shoulders, undress uncomfortably on your hips. It smells faintly of old wine and regret. Your arms are threaded through the side holes, giving you a limited range of motion. Like a toy soldier, you can't bend at the waist. You can't sit. You are trapped inside a walking prison of oaken staves and iron hoops. This punishment was particularly popular in the German states and the Netherlands, where a burgeoning Protestant work ethic cast a very dim view on public intoxication and laziness. This is a prime example of literal punishment. You spent your money to be in the barrel, so now you will literally be in the barrel. A fun, niche detail of this punishment is that sometimes, instead of a custom made wooden cloak, the authorities would use a real, discarded wine or beer cask. In those cases, the bottom would be knocked out, and the sinner would be forced to wear the very vessel of their downfall, making the symbolism even more potent. It was a walking billboard advertising your poor life choices. You are then paraded out into the town square. The walk is a clumsy, shuffling ordeal. The barrel sways and bumps against your legs. Every step is an effort. Once again, you are the center of attention. But this time, the laughter is different. It's less pointed than it was for the gossip, more mocking than it was for the baker. You look ridiculous, like a snail that has lost its shell and decided to move into a piece of discarded plumbing. Children run ahead of you, shouting, "Here comes the barrel man." The historical debate around this punishment centers on its true purpose. Was it really a tool to combat alcoholism? A sort of proto-rehab program based on public humiliation? Or was it more of a tool for social control, aimed squarely at the poor? A wealthy merchant could drink himself into a stupor in the privacy of his own home with no consequences. But you, a common laborer found drunk in an alley, become a public example. Some historians argue that the drunkard's cloak was less about policing drinking and more about policing poverty and vagrancy, ensuring that the lower classes remained sober, productive, and in their proper place. They led you to the pillory, a wooden frame with holes for your head and hands, but they don't put you in. Instead, they simply chain your barrel to the post, leaving you standing there, trapped in your wooden prison for the rest of the day. You can't lean comfortably. You can't find a position of rest. You are just there, a man in a barrel. The sun beats down on your head. The wood chafes your skin, and you have nothing to do but stand, endure the taunts, and reflect on the fact that perhaps, just perhaps, you should have stopped at one pint. The long day finally ends. The chain is unfastened, and the heavy barrel is lifted off your shoulders, leaving you feeling strangely light and exposed. Your brief, uncomfortable life as a man in a barrel is over. The tavern's allure has faded, replaced by a sore back and a deep sense of foolishness. The world present reforms, and the stench of stale ale is washed away by the sharp, earthy scent of tanned leather and dyed wool. You are standing in a different part of town now, in the vibrant, chaotic heart of the marketplace. You are no longer a drunkard. You are a merchant, a seller of goods. Your store is modest, but your ambition is not. You trade in spices, a pinch of pepper here, a stick of cinnamon there, exotic dust that can transform a bland peasant's stew into a minor feast. Your customers trust you. They hand over their hard earned coins, believing they are getting exactly what they pay for pure, unadulterated saffron from Spain, genuine cloves from the far miners of Moluccas. But like the baker, you face temptations. Times are tough, the trade routes are dangerous, and the cost of genuine spices is astronomical. So you've made some compromises. You've been creative. The fiery red saffron, it's mostly dyed corn silk, with just a few real threads mixed in for aroma. The pungent ground pepper, it's been bulked out with ground nut-shells and dried berries. It's a classic con, a quiet deception that pads your purse with every transaction. You tell yourself it's not really hurting anyone. They're still getting the flavor, aren't they? Mostly. Your deception, however, has a shelf life. A wealthy housewife, planning a grand feast for a visiting dignitary, discovers that your saffron has turned her prized fish to a strange, muddy yellow instead of a brilliant gold. In a fury, she takes the evidence to the magistrate. An investigation is launched. Your spice bags are seized and inspected by the guild. The truth comes out, as it always seems to do. You are not just a clever merchant. You are a fraud, a liar who has preyed on the trust of his community. Once again, the bailiff pays a visit. He is starting to look like an old acquaintance on a very predictable schedule. For this crime, there is no barrel, no bridle. You are being escorted to the most iconic of all public punishments, the pillory. It stands in the most prominent part of the marketplace, a permanent wooden fixture of justice. It's a simple T-shaped structure, with a hinged top board containing 3 holes, a large one for your neck and 2 smaller ones for your wrists. It's not designed for pain, but for utter helplessness and maximum exposure. You are forced to climb onto the small wooden platform. You bend forward, placing your hands into the curved notches of the lower board. Then, with a heavy thud, the top board is closed and locked. You are trapped. Your head is bowed. Your hands are held fast, and you are facing the crowd. You are utterly defenseless. This is the whole point. The punishment isn't just being here. It's what the community is allowed to do to you while you're here. In many places, this was an officially sanctioned free minus for minus all. People were encouraged to throw rotten vegetables, mud, animal dung, and all manner of filth at the person in the pillory. It was a messy, smelly, and deeply degrading experience. A curious little minus-known fact about the pillory is its strange relationship with public opinion. While it was a tool of the authorities, the crowd's reaction could turn it into a political thermometer. If the public believed the person being punished was a genuine villain like a fraudulent merchant, they would be pelted mercilessly. However, if the person was being punished for something the public supported, like speaking out against an unpopular tax, they might be showered with flowers instead, turning the punishment into a rally. Your crime, sadly, does not garner public sympathy. To make your punishment fit the crime more precisely, the bailiff does something extra. He takes a bag of your fraudulent spices, the fake saffron, the adulterated pepper, and hangs it around your neck, right under your nose. The smell of your own lie is now your constant companion. Then, he takes a handful of the stuff and lights it, letting the foul-smelling smoke waft up into your face. You are forced to literally smell your own deceit. The historical debate here often revolves around the concept of justice. Was this truly justice? Or was it mob rule, thinly veiled as a legal sentence? Scholars argue about where the line was drawn. While throwing refuse was common, causing serious injury was often forbidden, though it undoubtedly happened. Some legal historians see the pillory as a sophisticated tool that outsourced the messy part of punishment to the populace, allowing the state to maintain a degree of cleanliness while still delivering a powerful message. It was a way of saying, this person has not only broken our laws, but has offended all of you, and we now deliver them to your judgment. So you stand there, locked in wood, head down. A rotten cabbage bounces off your shoulder. A splatter of mud catches you on the cheek. The smell of your burning fake spices fills your nostrils, a constant reminder of the corner you tried to cut. You are a living advertisement for honesty in trade, paid for with every bit of filth and garbage your community can find to throw at you. The crowd's cheers and the splat of rotten fruit against would fade into a dull, distant memory. You are released from the pillory, your neck stiff, your clothes stained, and your reputation as a merchant in tatters. You shuffle away, head down, and the world dissolves into a merciful haze. When it comes back, the sharp smell of your fake spices is gone, replaced by the familiar, comforting scent of beeswax polish and wood smoke from your own hearth. You are home. You are no longer a swindler. You are a spouse, a respectable, married member of the community. Your life is one of routine and domesticity. You have a partner, a home, a place in the intricate social tapestry of the town. On the surface, everything is as it should be. You attend church on Sundays. You nod to your neighbors. You share a bed and a life with the person you marry. For beneath this placid surface, there is a secret, a shared glance that lingered too long, a whispered word in a quiet lane, a series of stolen moments that belong to you and someone else, someone who is not your spouse. In a town this small, secrets are a luxury. They are commodities traded by the gossips, noticed by the perpetually observant. Your secret, carefully guarded as you thought it was, has unraveled. Perhaps a neighbor with a window overlooking the wrong place saw something. Perhaps your own spouse, sensing a shift in the domestic weather, grew suspicious. It doesn't matter how. The secret is out, and this transgression is not a matter for the Merchants' Guild or the town wall. This is a sin, a moral failing that strikes at the very heart of the social order of the family. The complaint is made to the church authorities, and the judgment is both swift and severe. The knock on the door comes, but it's not the bailiff alone this time. He is accompanied by a parish official, a man whose face is etched with pious disapproval, and they are not here just for you. Standing awkwardly behind them is the other person, your partner in this secret affair. The sight of them here, in the cold, official light of day, is a shock to the system. The stolen warmth of your secret meetings is instantly replaced by a chilling, public reality. The parish official is holding the instrument for your penance. It's not a mask or a barrel. It is a set of iron shackles connected by a short, heavy chain. In some regions, it might be a scandal minus yoke, a wooden frame that locks the people together at the neck and shoulders, forcing them into a grotesque, permanent embrace. Yours is a simpler design to sets of wrist manacles linked by about 2 feet of chain. You are to be literally bound to the evidence of your sin. The bailiff fastens one cold iron cuff around your wrist. Then he takes the wrist of your co-minus conspirator and locks them into the other. You are now physically tethered. The short chain forces you to stand uncomfortably close, shoulder to shoulder. To mow, you must coordinate. To walk, you must find a shared rhythm. The private intimacy you once sought is now a public prison, forcing you together under the hostile gaze of the entire community. This form of punishment, forcing adulterous couples to undergo a walk of shame or SCH and Loffen, was common across Europe, a way of making a privates in a profoundly public matter. You are laid out into the street. This parade feels different from the others. There is less open mockery and more quiet, simmering judgment. You can feel the eyes of every husband and wife on you. Their stares are a mixture of condemnation and, perhaps, a flicker of fear. You represent a threat to the stability of their own homes. Every step is an exercise in excruciating awkwardness. If you stumble, you pull the other person off balance. If they walk too fast, the chain yanks at your arm. You are a clumsy, minus-legged creature, bound by your shared guilt. One of the fascinating, undebated aspects of this punishment is its ultimate purpose. On the surface, it's about upholding the sanctity of marriage and biblical law. But many social historians argue it was, at its core, about protecting property and bloodlines. In an era without DNA tests, a wife's fidelity was paramount to ensuring that a man's land, wealth, and titles passed to his legitimate heirs. A wife's infidelity threatened this entire system. A husband's infidelity, while still a sin, was often seen as a far lesser crime unless it involved the wife of another prominent man, thereby threatening his bloodline. This is why the punishments were often, though not always, applied more harshly to women. The academic argument continues, was this about moral purity, or patriarchal anxiety over inheritance? A niche variation of this punishment didn't even involve a parade. In some parishes, the couple would simply be chained to the main door of the church during the Sunday service. They would be forced to stand outside, hearing the sermon on sin and damnation, while the entire congregation filed past them, entering and exiting the house of God. They were literally and figuratively locked out of the community of the faithful. Your awkward, shuffling journey ends right there, at the heavy oak doors of the town church. The bailiff loops another chain through your shackle minus link and fastens it to a large iron ring on the church wall, and there you are left, bound together. The two of you are now a living sermon, a warning to all who pass. You cannot look at each other, and you cannot look away. You can only stand side minus by minus side in shared silence, waiting for the long, judgmental day to finally come to an end. The heavy chain falls away from the church wall, and you are finally released. The ordeal is over. You and your former co-minus conspirator part without a word, scurrying in opposite directions, eager to be swallowed by the anonymity of the crowd. The acute shame of being bound together begins to recede, leaving behind a dull ache of regret. The world of adult transgressions and their solemn consequences grows hazy, and as it refocuses, you feel strangely smaller. The air no longer smells of stone and judgment, but of chalk dust, old wood, and the faint, musty scent of damp wool cloaks. You are a child. You are sitting on a hard, backless wooden bench in a long, dark room. The only light comes from a couple of high, narrow windows, and the only heat from a small, smoky fireplace at the far end. This is school. A stern, black minus-robed schoolmaster stands at the front, his voice a monotonous drone as he drills the class on Latin verbs. Amo, amos, the words buzz in your ears like sleepy flies. Your attention drifts. Outside the window, a sparrow was meticulously building a nest under the eaves of the neighboring room. It hops back and forth with bits of twig and moss, a creature of pure, focused industry. It is infinitely more interesting than Latin verbs. The master's voice stops. The sudden silence snaps you back to the present. He has asked a question. All eyes are on you. The other children, who were just as lost in their own daydreams moments ago, are now laser-minus focused, sensing a break in the monotony. The master repeats the question, his voice sharp with impatience. What is the perfect tense of Rita? To say, you stare at him, your mind a complete and utter blank. The sparrow, the twigs, the entire outside world has chased every last Latin word out of your head. You don't know. You stammer something, a nonsensical guess that makes a few of the boys behind you snicker. The master sighs, the long, theatrical exhalation of disappointment. This is not just a failure to learn. It is a moral failing. It is sloth, laziness, a rejection of the gift of education that your parents are paying for. For this, there is a specific, time-honored remedy. He walks to a corner of the room and picks up a tall, conical hat made of stiff, grey paper. On the front, in crude charcoal, is the letter D. This is the Drunkard. He beckons you to the front of the classroom. You walk the short distance, each step feeling like a mile. The floorboards creak, announcing your shame to the entire room. The snickers are louder now. He places the hat on your head. It's light, but it feels as heavy as the drunkard's barrel. It wobbles slightly, making you feel even more foolish. He then points to a 3-legged stool in the corner, facing the cold, damp stone wall. There you will sit, he commands, until you have seen the error of your idle ways. You trudge to the corner and sit down. You're back to the class. You are now officially the dunce. This punishment was incredibly common in schools for centuries. The logic was simple. If deeply flawed public humiliation would motivate a lazy or slow-witted child to apply themselves, the ridicule of their peers was considered a powerful tool to encourage conformity and academic effort. Here's a strange piece of trivia for you. The term dunce has a truly ironic origin. It comes from the followers of a highly influential 13th century Scottish philosopher and theologian named John Duns Scotus. He was one of the most brilliant minds of his time, and his followers were known as Dunsmen or Scotists. However, centuries later, during the rise of humanism and the Renaissance, his complex theological arguments were dismissed by new thinkers as overly subtle and nonsensical. They began to use the name duns or dunce as an insult for anyone who was stubbornly resistant to new knowledge. A stupid person. So, the very symbol of foolishness, the dunce, is named after the followers of a certified genius. Historians of education still debate the true function of these methods. Was the dunce a genuinely held pedagogical belief a sincere, if misguided, attempt to foster learning by making ignorance a painful experience? Or was it primarily a tool for maintaining absolute classroom control? In an era with one master and dozens of students of varying ages and abilities, Discipline was paramount. The cap was a highly visible way to enforce order and make an example of anyone who disrupted the lesson, whether through distraction or genuine difficulty. Was the goal to build up a child's intellect, or to break down their will to disobey? You sit on your stool, facing the wall. You can hear the lesson resume behind you, the familiar drone of Latin. You can hear a whispered joke and a stifled laugh, undoubtedly at your expense. The stone wall is cold and blank. You trace the lines of the mortar with your eyes. The D on the hat feels like it's burning a hole in your reputation. Your crime wasn't playing bad music or selling light bread. It was simply letting your mind wander. And for that, you are exiled to the corner, a lonely island of shame in a sea of your peers, wearing a paper hat named for a philosopher you've never even heard of. The corner of the classroom dissolves. The cold stone wall, the pointy paper hat, the sting of childish shame, it all melts away like morning mist. You are no longer a small boy lost in a daydream. You are a grown woman, and the world is no longer a place of Latin verbs, but of domestic duties and simmering frustrations. The air is thick with the smell of stew and resentment. You are in your own home, a small, cramped space that feels more like a cage with each passing year. And you have a voice, a loud one. You use it to argue with the merchant who tries to short-change you, to chide the neighbor whose pig keeps digging up your herb garden, and yes, to express your profound dissatisfaction to your husband, who seems to track in more mud than he earns in coin. In this world, your sharp tongue and quick temper are not seen as signs of a passionate spirit. They are a public nuisance. You are a scold, a shrew, a common disturber of the peace. Your husband, weary of the arguments, has complained to the parish elders. The neighbors, tired of the shouting, have added their own testimonies. Your crime is not one of deception or theft. It is one of atmosphere. You have soured the communal peace with your anger. And for a woman with a hot temper, the town elders have a very literal, very wet cure. The bailiff arrives, his expression one of grim resignation. It seems his entire career is built upon escorting the town's various misfits to their designated humiliations. You are taken from your home, not with the quiet shame of the adulterer, but with a sense of sputtering, righteous indignation. What have you done? Really? But speak your mind. But your protests are ignored. You are marched not to the market square, but to the edge of the town, where a murky green pond sits, stagnant and uninvited. On its bank stands the same device used for the dishonest baker, but today it has a different name and a different purpose. It is the cucking-stool. Strapped into the chair at the end of the long wooden beam, you are hoisted into the air, suspended over the foul smelling water. The crowd that has gathered is boisterous and cheerful. This is one of their favorite shows. The logic of the punishment is brutally simple. A fiery temper must be cool. A heated argument must be quenched. They are going to dunk you until your legendary anger is extinguished, replaced by a shivering, dripping silence. Here's a curious piece of historical linguistics for you. The terms cucking-stool and ducking-stool are now used interchangeably, but they were originally two distinct punishments. The cucking-stool was, to be blunt, a toilet chair. A person was simply forced to sit on it in public, a punishment of pure shame and filth. The ducking-stool was the machine of immersion, the giant seesaw designed for dunking. Over time, the names merged, but the original intent of the cucking-stool highlights just how much these punishments were about debasement and disgust. The lever is pulled, and you plunge into the pond. The shock of the freezing, slimy water is absolute. It steals your breath and fills your senses with the smell of decaying algae. Before you can even scream, the furious words bubbling in your chest, you are hoisted back up into the air, gasping and spluttering, hair plastered to your face, clothes weighing you down like lead. The crowd roars with laughter. Your fury, once a hot flame, is now just a sputtering, waterlogged ember. Then down you go again, and again, the cycle of shock and exposure repeating until you are too cold and exhausted to feel angry anymore. The academic debate surrounding this punishment is particularly intense in the field of gender history. Was this truly an instrument of justice for anyone who was a public nuisance? Or was it a weapon specifically designed to police female speech and enforce patriarchal norms? The evidence overwhelmingly suggests the latter. While a few records mention men being dubbed, the vast majority of victims were women. A man who was loud, argumentative, or angry in public was often seen as assertive or authoritative. A woman exhibiting the exact same traits was labeled a shrew, a disorderly woman who was stepping outside her divinely ordained role of quiet subservience. Historians argue that the cucking-stool was a powerful, symbolic tool for keeping women in their place, a brutal reminder that their public voice would be forcibly submerged. The ordeal ends. You are unstrapped from the chair, left shivering on the muddy bank. The crowd begins to disperse, their entertainment over for the day. You are left alone, soaked to the bone, your anger washed away and replaced with a deep, chilling humiliation. You are no longer the fiery Scold. You are just a cold, wet woman who has been taught the brutal lesson that in this town, some voices are meant to be heard, and others are meant to be drowned out. The shivering subsides, and the memory of the cold, murky pond water drains away. The feeling of being a scalded woman, publicly cooled and silenced, evaporates into the path. As the world reassembles itself, a different sensation takes over. It's not coldness, but a hot, prickly impatience, a surge of physical energy. You are no longer a woman in a damp dress. You are a broad-minded shouldered man, and you are in a hurry. The air is dusty and smells of dry grain and the sweat of many bodies packed too closely together. You are standing in a queue, a long, miserably slow queue that snakes from the door of the town granary all the way across the corner of the square. A shipment of grain has arrived, and everyone is waiting for their ration, but they are so slow. A woman at the front is chatting with the clerk. Two men behind her are swapping stories. The line shuffles forward an inch at a time. Your patience, a very shallow well to begin with, is now completely dry. You have things to do, work to finish. You are a man of action and purpose, and this dawdling is an insult to your time. Your gaze sweeps over the people ahead of you. They seem frail, hesitant. You are stronger, faster. Why should you, a man with important business, be forced to wait behind them? The thought solidifies into a decision. With a huff of frustration, you step out of the line. You don't walk to the front. You barge. You shove a slighter, pull the man aside, ignoring his startled protest. You push past a woman who pulls her child close, giving you a frightened, angry glare. You reach the counter, slap your empty sack down, and demand service. It's a small act of bullying, a public declaration that your needs are more important than the established rules of fairness. This crude display of arrogance does not go unnoticed. The granary clerk, a man who has seen this 100 times, simply raises an eyebrow and rings a small, short bell. Within moments, our old friend the bailiff materializes from the crowd, his face etched with a familiar, deep weariness. Your attempt to save a few minutes is about to cost you the rest of your day. He grabs your arm in a grip surprisingly strong for a man who looks so tired, and holds you away from the counter. You are laid back to the town's grim trophy room of correctional devices. He walks past the Shame Flute, ignores the Brank, and dismisses the Drunkard's barrel. He goes to a corner and retrieves something that looks, at first, like another barrel minus Cloak, but this one is different. It is heavier, darker, and has a far more sinister reputation. He calls it the Spanish Cloak, and the name alone sends a small shiver down your spine. It is a cask of thick wood or heavy iron, but it sterilizes on the inside. The interior surface is lined with dozens of sharp iron spikes. This is a punishment designed with a diabolical, poetic justice. The spikes are not long enough to cause serious, deep wounds, but they are perfectly positioned to punish movement. They are angled to ensure that if you stand perfectly, rigidly still, they will only press lightly against your clothes. But if you lean, if you shift your weight, if you try to walk or bend, they will bite into your flesh, delivering 1,000 tiny, sharp punishments. It is a prison that forces you into absolute stillness, a direct and painful rebuttal to your impatient, boorish behavior. Here is a strange and debated piece of history for all its fame. The Spanish cloak is a ghost. Historians and experts on arms and armor have long argued about its existence. While it's a staple in sensationalist torture museums and 19th-century engravings, concrete proof of it, being a standard, court-ordered punishment is incredibly scarce. It's almost entirely absent from official legal documents and town records of the period. This has led to a significant academic debate. Was the Spanish cloak a real, if rarely used, device for extreme cases, or was it more of a ghoulish myth, a piece of anti-Spanish propaganda, hence the name intended to paint their justice system as uniquely cruel? Or perhaps it was a literary invention, a cautionary tale that became so vivid people started believing it was real. The line between historical fact and popular folklore is incredibly blurry here. Myth or not, for you, it is very real. The elephant is assistant force the heavy, spiked barrel over your head. They lower it carefully, but the process is still terrifying. You can feel the points of the spikes catching on your tunic. Once it's settled on your shoulders, you are trapped in a state of high alert. You stand, ramrod straight, every muscle tense. Even the act of breathing feels risky. They march you, or rather, you force yourself to shuffle in a slow, agonizing parody of a walk back to the very queue you disrupted. They place you right beside it, a living, breathing warning to anyone else who might think of pushing to the front. The people you should decide now file past, their rations in hand. They don't laugh. This punishment is too grim for laughter. They look at you with a mixture of fear and cold satisfaction. You, the man who couldn't bear to be still, and now the most still thing in the entire square. A bead of sweat forms on your forehead and begins to trickle down your temple. You don't dare wipe it. You just stand, feeling its slow path down your cheek, anticipating the sting that will come if it causes you to flinch even a single, tiny bit. The agonizing stillness forced upon you by the spiked cloak begins to fade. The feeling of 1,000 tiny threats against your skin dissolves, and the tense, rigid posture you held for hours finally relaxes. The world comes back not in a rush, but in a series of sharp, frantic jolts. The dusty, open air of the granary queue is gone, replaced by a close, smoky atmosphere that reeks of stale ale, sweat, and desperate hope. You are hunched over a crude wooden table in the darkest corner of a loud tavern, the outside world reduced to a distant hum. You are a gambler. The clatter of dice on wood is the only music you hear, the only sound that matters. In your hand, you cradle 3 small cubes of polished bone, each dotted with black pips that seem to hold the entirety of your future. This isn't a friendly game for sport. This is a fever. You're retracing losses, throwing good money after bad, convinced that the next roll, surely the next roll, will be the one that turns your luck around. The small pile of coins in front of you dwindles with each throw. You bet the last of your earnings. You lose. You bet the money that was meant for your family spread this week. You lose again. A cold pit forms in your stomach, but the fever doesn't break. It only burns hotter. This obsession is your crime. It's not just about losing money. It's about a fundamental rejection of the social order. The church preaches against gambling as a sin, a foolish attempt to gain wealth without honest labor. The town council sees it as a source of debt, girls, and neglected families. You are a hole in the community's boat, taking on water and threatening to drag others down with you. Your personal spiral is a public problem, and when your final, desperate bet fails and you are left with nothing but an empty purse and the hollow echo of the dice, your problem is about to become very public indeed. A hand falls on your shoulder. It is not a friendly commiseration from another gambler. It's the firm, practiced grip of the town bailiff. He seems to have an almost supernatural ability to appear at the precise moment a person's bad decisions reach their inevitable conclusion. He hauls you from your store, away from the game, and out into the shocking brightness of the late afternoon. This time, your punishment requires a different kind of artistry. He leads you to that all minus to minus familiar shed of public shame and brings out an object that is both terrifying and ludicrous. It is an iron mask, and mask. But, unlike the Scold's bridle, which was a cage of simple straps, this is a sculpted piece of ironwork. It's shaped into a grotesque face with a long, drooping nose and a foolish, gaping mouth. It's designed not to silence you, but to redefine you. To make things worse, it has been crudely painted. Across the forehead and cheeks are the unmistakable symbols of your downfall, blackened white dice and a scattering of playing cards. This is the height of targeted humiliation. Shame masks, a particularly German specialty, were often crafted with specific vices in mind. A musician who played poorly might be forced to wear a mask with an exaggerated flute for a nose. An eavesdropper might wear one with enormous, donkey-like ears. Yours is the gambler's mask. You are not just being punished, you are being branded, forced to wear an effigy of your sin. A niche but fascinating detail is that some of these masks included bells or noisemakers, ensuring that the wearer could not pass unnoticed, turning their walk of shame into a jangling spectacle. You are forced into the mask. It's heavy, cold, and smells of rust. The air you breathe is stale and metallic. The eye holes are small, restricting your vision to a narrow slice of the world. The bailiff then leads you on a parade through the very streets where you should have been working or heading home. Everyone who sees you knows your crime instantly. The painted dice on your iron face tell the whole story. You are the man who throws his life away on gains of chance. The academic world still has conversations about the deeper meaning of these masks. Was it purely about social control and public shaming? A way to visually label deviants and reinforce community norms? Or was there something more primal at play? Some cultural historians suggest the masks touched on older, folkloric beliefs. By forcing a sinner to wear a grotesque caricature of their sin, they were essentially making the person wear their inner demon on the outside. The monstrous face of the mask represented the monstrous nature of the vice itself. It was a form of symbolic exorcism through public spectacle. Was this a rational legal tool, or a piece of quasi-magical street theater designed to literally face a person with their own corruption? Your parade ends, as it so often does, at the town pillory. You are chained to the post, but your head and hands are free. Your prison is the iron face that has been locked onto your own. You stand there, breathing the stale air inside, looking out at the world through two small holes. The laughter and jeers feel distant, muffled. The only thing that feels truly real is the oppressive weight of the mask and the painted symbols you can no longer see, but can feel on your skin like a brand. You are no longer a person. You are a concept, a walking lesson on the price of love. The heavy iron mask is finally unlatched, and fresh air rushes in, cool and sweet against your skin. The muffled world snaps back into sharp focus. The memory of the painted dice and the weight of your iron effigy begin to feel like a strange fever dream. The smoky tavern, the clatter of bone on wood, it all recedes. The air around you changes. It's no longer thick with ale and desperation, but filled with the bustling, everyday smells of the marketplace sawdust, fresh fish, ripe apples, and the tangy scent of cured meats. You are not a gambler anymore. You are a different kind of opportunist, a quicker, quieter kind. You move through the crowd with a practiced, almost invisible grace. Your eyes don't linger on any one thing for too long. You are watching hands, not faces. You notice the way the wealthy merchant's purse hangs heavy and loose from his belt. You see the farmer's wife, distracted by a bolt of bright blue cloth, her coin pouch resting unattended in her basket. You are a cupbearer, a petty thief. Your work is a dance of distraction and dexterity. A slight bump, a faint stumble, a quick, delicate pinch, and a small weight is transferred from their possession to yours. It's a meager living, but it requires a certain skill, a nerve of steel. Today, however, your nerve fails you, or perhaps your skill does, as you deftly lift a small leather pouch from a man haggling over the price of chickens. His hand darts out and clamps around your wrist like an iron trap. A cheeky falter, the slight, almost imperceptible tut. He holds your wrist high in the air, the stolen pouch still clutched in your fingers. Thief, he bellows, the single word cutting through the market chatter like a blade. The bustling crowd freezes. All eyes turn to you. Your dance is over. The bailiff, who by now must feel like your own personal shadow, arrives on the scene. There's no parade this time, no elaborate costume of shame. For a crime like this, direct theft, the punishment is more permanent. It is less about a day of public ridicule and more about a lifetime of public identification. You are dragged, struggling and protesting, not to the pillory or the pond, but to the blacksmith's forge at the edge of the market. The heat from the forge hits you like a physical blow. The air shimmers. The smith, a mountain of a man with soot-stained arms, says nothing. He simply takes a long iron rod from the glowing coals of his fire. At its tip is a small, distinct shape, glowing terrifying, brilliant orange. There could be a letter T for thief in England, or V for VOL, EUR in France, or a simple symbol, like a cross or a circle. This is a branding iron. The punishment of branding was a serious step up from the other shames you've endured. This was not something you could wash off or forget about once the day was over. This was a mark you would carry to your grave. You are held down, your hand forced flat against a heavy wooden block. The smell of hot metal fills your nostrils, a scent of pure menace. The smith approaches, the glowing iron held steady. The purpose of this punishment was twofold. First, it was a deterrent. The pain was excruciating, a memory seared into the mind as much as the flesh. Second, and perhaps more importantly, it was a permanent label, a brand on the hand, cheek, or shoulder instantly told anyone who saw it that you were a convicted criminal. It was a passport to a life of mistrust. You would never be hired for honest work. You would always be the first person suspected when something went missing. It was a social death sentence. A weird and somewhat gruesome piece of trivia about branding is the concept of benefit of the clergy. In medieval England, a legal loophole allowed first-time offenders who could prove they were clergymen to escape secular courts and be tried by the much more lenient ecclesiastical courts. The standard test was to read a passage from the Bible, usually Psalm 51, which became known as the neck-verse because it could save your neck. However, as literacy spread, non-clerics started memorizing the passage to cheat the system. To close this loophole, the law was changed. Even if you passed the reading test, you would still be branded on the thumb. This ensured you could only claim the benefit of the clergy once. Your branded thumb was a permanent record that you had already used your get minus, out minus, of minus, jail minus, free car. The academic debate here focuses on the evolution of punishment. Branding represents a shift away from purely shame minus based community minus enforced penalties towards a more state minus control, bureaucratic system of justice. The shame flute is about neighborhood opinion. The brand is about the state's memory. Historians argue whether this was a more humane system since it often replaced mutilation or execution for lesser crimes, or a more insidious one. While it might save your life, it condemned you to a permanent underclass, creating a visible caste of former criminals within society. It was a tool not just for punishment, but for permanent social stratification. The glowing iron descends. There is a hiss, a sickening smell of burnt flesh, and a searing white minus hot pain that eclipses everything. It is over in a second, but the pain blossoms, a fiery flower on the back of your hand. When the smith pulls the iron away, the dull, angry mark is left behind. It is raw, it is agonizing, and it will be there forever. You clutch your hand to your chest, the reality of the moment sinking in. You are no longer just a person who stole something. You are now, and will forever be, a thief. The searing pain on the back of your hand begins to cool, replaced by a dull, throbbing ache that seems to pulse in time with your heartbeat. The mark is there, a permanent dark spot on your skin, a story you can never erase. But then, like a dream shifting, the pain vanishes. You look at your hand, and the skin is smooth, unblemished. The gritty, smoky air of the forge clears, replaced by the refined scent of perfume, waxed wood, and money. So much money. You are no longer a desperate thief. You are a member of the new merchant elite, a person of considerable wealth and taste. You are standing in your own lavishly decorated home, admiring your reflection in a small, Precious mirror of polished steel, you are dressed in the absolute height of fashion. Your doublet is made of deep purple velvet, a color so expensive to produce it was traditionally reserved for royalty. Your sleeves are extravagantly puffed and slashed, revealing a fine linen shirt underneath. You have lace at your collar and cuffs, a jauntily feathered hat on your head, and pointed shoes so long they almost trip you. You look magnificent. You look powerful, and that is precisely the problem. Your crime is not one of action, but of appearance. You are a commoner, a person of non-noble birth who has acquired wealth through trade, not inheritance, and you are dressing above your station. In the rigidly hierarchical world of this era, your fabulous outfit is not a personal style choice. It is an act of social rebellion. It blurs the lines that are supposed to keep everyone in their proper place. How can anyone tell a lord from a merchant if the merchant is dressed in finer clothes than the lord? This was a source of immense anxiety for the old aristocracy. To combat this, they enacted what were known as some PTU laws. A knock on the door. It is not the bailiff this time, but a far more prim and officious figure, a city official, accompanied by 2 guards. He holds a scroll of parchment. He has come to enforce the law. He looks you up and down, his gaze lingering on the forbidden purple of your doublet and the scandalous length of your shoe minus points. He unrolls the scroll and begins to read in a loud, clear voice, citing the specific town statutes you have violated. You are forbidden from wearing purple silk. The number of slashes on your sleeves exceeds the legal limit for your social class. Your shoe minus tips are 3 inches longer than what is permitted for a non-minus aristocrat. The punishment for violating some PTU laws was usually financial. You are issued a hefty fine, a sum that stings even your deep pockets. But the punishment doesn't end there. The second part is the shame. Your name will be read aloud in the marketplace and posted on the church door for all to see. You, who sought to display your success, will now have your arrogance publicly broadcast. Your fabulous outfit, intended to elevate your status, has instead become evidence of your criminal vanity. This is where we find a truly weird and specific historical detail: the obsession with pointy shoes. In the 14th and 15th centuries, the fashion for long, pointed shoes, called Krakow WS or Pananas, became so extreme among the wealthy that the toes grew to absurd lengths. They could be 6 inches, a foot, even 2 feet long, to the point where they had to be tied up to the wearer's knee with a small chain just to allow for walking. This trend was seen by moralists and the church as a sign of pure vanity and decadence. So some PTU laws were passed specifically to regulate shoe minus point length according to social rank. A king could have shoes of any length. A high minus ranking noble might be allowed points of 2 feet. A lesser knight, 1 foot. A merchant, 6 inches. And a common peasant was forbidden from wearing them at all. Your crime was not just fashion. It was a sartorial overreach of your designated 6 inches. The ongoing academic debate about some PTU laws questions their true effectiveness and purpose. Were these laws genuinely about maintaining social order and preventing moral decay, as they claimed, or were they a desperate economic tool used by the nobility to protect their own status and hamper the growing power of the new merchant class? By fining merchants for dressing well, they could raise revenue. By restricting access to luxury goods, they could try to stifle the industries that were making these commoners so rich. Some historians argue it was less about social purity and more about economic protectionism, a form of class warfare, fought with fabric and thread. The laws were also notoriously difficult to enforce and were constantly being updated, suggesting that people like you were constantly finding new and creative ways to break them. The official finishes his pronouncement. The fine is paid. The guards, with a certain smug satisfaction, take a pair of shears and snip off the offending points of your shoes, leaving them looking blunt and foolish. They don't take your purple doublet, but the fine ensures you will think twice before wearing it again. You are left standing in your magnificent, now minus mutilated outfit. The reflection in the mirror seems to mock you. You tried to use wealth to buy status, but you've learned a hard lesson. In this world, the rules of who gets to wear what are written not in fashion magazines, but in the law books, and your attempt to climb the social ladder through your wardrobe has just had its rungs kicked out from under it. The sting of the fine and the embarrassment of your snipped shoes begin to fade. The opulent, velvet-clad world of the wealthy merchant dissolves, and with it, the anxieties of social climbing. You are no longer concerned with fashion or status. You find yourself in a much quieter, more austere setting. The air is cool and smells of old stone, melting wax, and the faint, sweet scent of incense. You are near. Your knees press into the cold, hard flagstones of a large church, the cavernous space echoing with the hushed whispers of the faithful. You are a penitent. Your crime is not of the body or of commerce, but of the soul. Perhaps in a moment of anger, you uttered a curse against God. Perhaps you drunkenly mocked a saint or questioned a priest's sermon a little too loudly. Or maybe you simply failed to show the proper respect during a holy procession. In an age where faith was not a private choice but a public obligation, these were not minor indiscretions. This was blasphemy, an offense against the Almighty Himself, and by extension, against the entire community under His protection. Your sin was seen as a potential crack in the divine shield that protected the town from plague, famine, and disaster. Your punishment is not meted out by the bailiff, but by the parish priest. It is a spiritual sentence for a spiritual crime. There will be no iron masks or public dunking ears. Instead, you are assigned an act of public penance. You are to kneel here, at the entrance of the church, for the entire day, but you cannot do so in your normal clothes. That would be too easy. You must wear the uniform of the repentant sinner. You are stripped of your own clothes and given a simple, rough-spun white robe. It is coarse and scratchy against your skin. This is the San Benito, or a simpler version of it, the garment of public penance. It is deliberately plain and humble, a visual representation of your purified, if humble, state, in its more infamous, used during the Spanish Inquisition. The San Benito would be covered in symbols, flames for a heretic to be burned, crosses for one who repented, demons for the unrepentant. Yours is plain white, signifying a lesser sin, one that can be washed away with this act of contrition. You are also barefoot, the cold of the stone floor seeping into your soles, a constant reminder of your lowly position before God. In your hands, you are required to hold a single, unlit candle, a symbol of the light of faith you have yet to earn back. You kneel just outside the main doors, positioned so that every single person who comes to pray must pass by you. They see your white robe, your bare feet, your bowed head. They know what you are. There is no open jeering or thrown garbage. That would be inappropriate at the door of a church. Instead, there is something worse required, pious judgment. They look at you, shake their heads with a sorrowful click of the tongue, and murmur prayers for your fallen soul. Their pity is more shaming than any insult. Here we uncover a fascinating and often misunderstood piece of history, the rite of sanctuary. Churches were considered consecrated ground, a physical extension of God's authority. This meant that in many parts of medieval Europe, a fugitive fleeing the law could claim sanctuary by reaching the church doors. Once inside, they were legally protected from arrest by secular authorities. They couldn't be dragged out by the bailiff. This right wasn't a get minus out minus of minus jail minus free card. However, the fugitive would often have a set number of days to either negotiate a settlement, face trial with the church's mediation, or agree to go into exile, often being required to walk to the nearest port and take the first ship out of the kingdom, a journey known as abjuration of the realm. So while the church was the venue for your public shaming, for another person, that same stone floor could represent a desperate last hope for safety. The academic debate concerning public penance revolves around its dual nature. Was it primarily a religious act, a genuine pathway for an individual to reconcile with God and the church community through humility and prayer? Or was it a powerful, to love social control wielded by the clergy, by controlling the definition of sin and publicly staging the punishment? The church reinforced its moral authority over every aspect of daily life. It reminded the populace that while the town council might police their commerce and conduct, the church policed their very souls. Historians argue about whether the focus was more on saving the individual's soul or on maintaining the institution's power. The hours crawl by. Your knees ache with a deep, grinding pain. Your back is sore from holding the same position. The unlit candle in your hands feels as heavy as a bar of lead. You hear the faint chanting of the Mass from within, a holy ritual from which you are excluded. You are on the threshold, caught between the secular world of your sin and the sacred world you hope to enter. The sun sets, and the last of the worshippers departs. The priest finally emerges and tells you that your penance is complete. You can rise. You are cold, sore, and deeply humbled, having spent a full day as a living statue of regret at the gates of heaven. The ache in your knees from the cold stone floor finally subsides. The rough texture of the white penitent robe fades from your skin, and the somber, sacred air of the church dissolves. You are back in the clamor and chaos of the marketplace, but your role has changed once again. You are no longer a sinner seeking forgiveness from the church. You are an entrepreneur, a traveling salesman, a purveyor of hope in a bottle. You stand on a small wooden crate, your voice projecting over the babble of the crowd. Beside you is a rickety table covered in an array of small, dark glass bottles, each filled with a mysterious, murky liquid. You are a quack, a peddler of patent medicines and miraculous elixirs. You sell a balm that can cure baldness, a tonic that can soothe a teething baby, and your bestseller, a potent, multi-purpose syrup known as dry bath anonymous celebrated snake oil, guaranteed to cure everything from gout and rheumatism to melancholy and bad humors. Your sales pitch is a masterful performance, a blend of scientific sounding jargon, heartfelt testimonials from imaginary customers, and a dash of fear mongering about the dangers of unseen ailments. The problem, of course, is that your snake oil is a complete fraud. The secret formula is nothing more than cheap brandy, molasses for color and sweetness, and a generous dash of hot pepper to give it a potent kick. It doesn't cure anything, at best. It makes the customer slightly drunk and gives them a brief warming sensation. At worst, it could make them sicker. Your crime is a particularly cruel one. You are profiting from the desperation of the sick and the gullible. You are selling false hope. Your booming voice and brisk sales attract the attention of the local physician, a university-educated man who views you and your kind with utter contempt. He approaches your stall, listens to your outlandish claims, and then buys a bottle of your celebrated oil. He doesn't drink it. He uncorks it, sniffs it suspiciously, and then announces to the assembled crowd in a low, authoritative voice that you are a charlatan and a poison peddler. He reports you to the authorities, not just as a swindler, but as a danger to public health. The bailiff, who at this point seems to be permanently assigned to you, arrives and sizes up the situation. For the crime of selling fraudulent medicine, a particularly creative and fitting punishment is devised. You are not put in the pillory or given a mask. Instead, the bailiff confiscates your entire stock of phony elixirs. He then takes a long piece of twine and begins to thread it through the corks of the bottles, creating a long, clanking, ridiculous looking necklace. This heavy, rattling chain of glass and colored water is then draped around your neck. To complete the ensemble, a piece of parchment is hung from your neck like a sign. On it, in large, crude letters, are the words I-R-A-M-A-L-I-I and D-I-I, R-E-N-D-I-S-C-L-L-T-R-A-S-H. You are then forced to lead a parade, not a short walk to the pillory, but slow procession through every major street and alley of the town. You are a walking, rattling advertisement of your own fraud. The constant clinking of the bottles announces your approach, drawing people to their windows and doors. The sign explains your sin. Your own product, the symbol of your deceit, has become the instrument of your shame. A fascinating little side note on the term quack is its origin. It's a shortening of the old Dutch word quacksalver, which literally means hawker of sal. It referred to people who would boast loudly in the marketplace, quacking about the effectiveness of their ointment sauce. So the very name for a fake doctor is rooted in the loud, performative nature of their sales pitch, just like the one you were giving from your wooden crate. The academic debate around quackery and its punishment explores the very beginnings of consumer protection and medical regulation. Was the punishment of these peddlers truly about protecting public health, or was it more about professional jealousy and guild protectionism? University-trained physicians, unlicensed apothecaries saw quacks as a threat to their authority and their income. By publicly shaming them, they were not just punishing a fraudster, they were reinforcing their own professional monopoly on discrediting alternative or folk medicine. Historians question how much of this was a genuine effort to root out dangerous practices and how much was simply a turf war between official medicine and its unregulated competitors. Your march of shame continues. With every step, the bottles clink and clank together. Clink, clank, trash, liar. The rhythm of your failure follows you everywhere. Children run behind you, imitating the sound. The weight of the glass chain is immense, digging into your neck and shoulders. You are forced to walk past the homes of people who may have bought your useless syrup last week. Their faces now a mixture of anger and embarrassment. You, who made your living with your voice, are now rendered silent by the sheer, rattling weight of your own deception, forced to let your fraudulent wares do all the talking. The cacophony of your glass bottle necklace fades, and the heavy weight lifts from your shoulders. The public humiliation of the quack doctor melts away, and you find yourself in a much more intimate, but no less tense, situation. The world has shrunk to the confines of a small, smoky tavern room. Late at night, you are no longer a performer on a crate. You are a participant in a heated argument. You are a contrarian, a debater, someone who enjoys the thrust and parry of a good verbal sparring match. But tonight, fueled by cheap ale and a stubborn sense of self-importance, you have pushed things too far. The argument is about something trivial, the quality of a recent harvest, or the merits of a particular lord, but your words have become sharp, personal, and disrespectful. You have not just disagreed with your companion, you have insulted him, questioned his intelligence, and loudly belittled his opinion in front of the other patrons. Your opponent, a man with more social standing than you, has taken deep offense. You have not committed blasphemy or slander, but something more nebulous. You have been rude, insolent. You have failed to show proper deference. Your crime is one of tone. You are a top-minus speaker, someone with a sharp tongue who doesn't know their place. The offended gentleman makes a complaint. It's not a major legal case, but it's a matter of public order. Once again, you have disturbed the peace, this time with the weapon of your abrasive wit, and for this specific form of verbal assault, the authorities have yet another tailor-made device in their arsenal of shame. The bailiff, looking profoundly unimpressed with your late-night antics, escorts you from the tavern. He takes you to the shed of social correction, now as familiar to you as your own home. He selects a device that looks like a more severe cousin of the Scold's Bridle. It is another iron head -K, another SCH and mace, but this one is not painted with dice or shaped like a flute. It is sculpted into a cruel caricature of a human face, its features twisted into a permanent, silent scream. The mouth of the mask is wide open, as if bellowing, but the design serves the opposite function. Like the bridle, it includes an iron bit that presses down on the tongue, enforcing absolute silence. You are forced into the mask. The cold iron encases your head. The gag stifles your protests. The visual irony is crushing. You are forced to wear the face of a perpetual screamer as punishment for your own shouting. You, who could not control your mouth, now have it locked behind an iron caricature of your own vice. This is a punishment that says, "This is what you look like to us." A loud, gaping mouth with nothing worthwhile coming out of it. So we will make you wear it, and we will ensure nothing comes out of it at all. This particular form of shame mask highlights a curious aspect of medieval and early modern justice, its theatricality. These punishments were not just about deterrence, they were street theater. They were morality plays acted out with real people. The masks, costumes like the Drunkard's barrel, and props like the Shame Flute were all part of creating a vivid, memorable spectacle. The goal was to create a living, walking symbol of a particular sin, making the abstract concept of insolence or vanity concrete and visible to everyone. One of the historical debates that swirls around these punishments is about the intended audience. Were they truly for the benefit of the punished, aimed at reforming their character through shame? Or was the individual sinner merely a prop, a human canvas upon which a lesson for the rest of the community was painted? Many historians lean towards the latter. You, in your screaming mess, unless a person being corrected into more a public service announcement for everyone else. Your personal suffering is secondary to the message your spectacle sends to the dozens or hundreds of people who see you. You are a warning to your civil tongue, or you could be next. You are chained to a post in the quiet pre-Dawn Square, a silent, screaming statue. As the town awakens, the early risers, the bakers, the guards, the farmers heading to their fields stop and stare. They see the mows, and they understand. They might not know the specifics of your argument in the tavern, but they know what that face means. It means someone spoke out of turn. It means someone's words were deemed too sharp, too loud, too proud. You stand there as the sun rises, trapped behind a face that isn't yours, unable to speak a single word of explanation or apology. The mask's open mouth seems to mock your enforced silence. You, who so enjoyed the power of your words, are now a monument to their uselessness. You are forced to endure the stares, the whispers, and the cold reality that in this world, it's not just what you say that matters, but how, when, and to whom you say it, and you have failed on all accounts. The cold iron of the screaming mask is removed, and your jaw aches with relief. The ability to speak returns, but you have no desire to use it. The humiliation of being silenced by a grotesque caricature has left a bitter taste in your mouth. The tavern, the argument, the feeling of smug defiance, it all dissipates like smoke. A new reality asserts itself, one filled with the sounds of marching feet, the clang of steel, and the smell of horses and canvas. You are a soldier, not a glorious knight in shining armor, but a common foot soldier, a pikeman in a mercenary company. Your life is one of harsh discipline, endless drilling, and the constant, gnawing possibility of a violent end. You signed up for adventure, or steady pay, for a chance to escape a life of farming or manual labor. But the reality is far from glorious. The food is terrible, the marches are grueling, and your captain is a hard man who values discipline above all else. The army is encamped, preparing for a battle that is expected at dawn. The mood is tense. Stories circulate about the enemy's numbers, about their ferocity. Fear begins to coil in your stomach. A cold, slippery snake. This isn't the heroic adventure you imagined. This is the prelude to a slaughter. As night falls and your comrades try to sleep, you make a decision. You are not a hero. You are a survivor. Under the cover of darkness, you slip away from the camp, deserting your post, your comrades, and your duty. You are saving your own skin. Your escape is short, mine has lived. A cavalry patrol, sweeping the perimeter, finds you before you've gone a mile. You are dragged back to camp not as a soldier, but as a coward and a traitor. In a military context, desertion is the ultimate crime. It threatens the integrity of the entire army. Your personal fear, if allowed to spread, could lead to a rout. The punishment must be severe, not just to hurt you, but to terrify anyone else who might be thinking of running. You are not hanged or shot. That would be too quick. Instead, you are sentenced to a punishment designed for maximum pain and humiliation within the military community, riding the wooden horse. This was a particularly brutal form of military punishment, popular in the 17th and 18th centuries. The device is simple and savage. A horse is constructed from a log or a series of planks joined together to form a sharp, triangular backbone. This is then mounted on 4 legs. You are hoisted up and forced to straddle this sharp wooden ridge. Your full body weight rests on the narrow, angled surface. The pain is immediate and excruciating. To make it worse, they often tied heavy weights, like muskets or cannonballs, to your ankles, increasing the pressure and ensuring you couldn't use your legs to relieve the agony. You are left there, riding the horse, in the middle of the parade ground for all the other soldiers to see. This punishment exists in a strange historical space. While clearly a form of torture, it was considered a legitimate disciplinary tool. not an act of wanton cruelty. A weirdly specific detail about its use is how commanders would vary the duration based on the severity of the crime. A minor infraction might earn you an hour on the horse. Desertion could earn you a full day, or several hours a day for a week, often timed to coincide with mealtimes or drills, so the entire regiment would have to march past and witness your suffering. The academic debate here focuses on the nature of military justice. Was this about maintaining order, or was it about asserting absolute power through terror? Historians of warfare argue that such brutal punishments were seen as a grim necessity. Armies of this period were often composed of mercenaries, conscripts, and the desperate dregs of society. Commanders believed that only the most extreme forms of punishment could forge such disparate men into a cohesive fighting force and keep them from deserting or mutinying. The pain inflicted on you was a calculated message to every man in the regiment: the enemy might kill you, but if you run, we will make you wish you were dead. It was a form of psychological warfare waged by a commander against his own troops. The sun begins to rise, casting a pale light over the camp. The other soldiers are roused and begin to form up for their morning drills. They march past you. Some look away, unable to watch. Others stare with a mixture of pity and contempt. They know that in a few hours, they will be facing the enemy's pikes and muskets. But you are facing a different kind of battle. A lonely war against a sharp piece of wood and the dead weight hanging from your feet. The pain is a white minus hot fire. You try to shift, to find some impossible angle that offers relief, but any movement only makes it worse. You are a living monument to cowardice. Your agony is a stark and brutal lesson for the entire army on the eve of battle. The white minus hot agony of the wooden horse fades. The phantom weights fall from your ankles, and the grim world of military justice dissolves. The sounds of the army camp are replaced by the gentle tolling of a church bell. The air no longer smells of steel and fear, but of damp stone and the dry, papery scent of old books. You are no longer a soldier. You are something far more secure, far more comfortable. You are a wealthy landowner, a man of property and influence. You are sitting in your finely carved wooden pew in the town church, listening to the Sunday sermon. You are a pillar of the community. You are respected, even fair. Your lands are vast. Your harvests are plentiful, and your purse is heavy. You are also, in your heart of hearts, profoundly cheap. You see the collection plate making its way down the aisle, and you feel a familiar pang of reluctance. You watch as your neighbors, many of whom are your own tenants and owe you a portion of their crop, drop their meager coins into the velvet bag. They have so little, yet they give. You have so much, and you give nothing, or perhaps just this most insignificant coin you can find, a gesture of compliance rather than charity. This is your crime. It's not illegal. There's no law that says you must be generous, but in the moral economy of the parish, your avarice is a sin. Your refusal to contribute to the church's charitable work, caring for the poor, the sick, the orphaned is a public scandal. You are hoarding the blessings that God, according to the priest's sermon, has bestowed upon you. Your stinginess is a tear in the fabric of Christian community. Since this is not a crime the bailiff can punish, the church has its own methods. The priest, a man who has witnessed your tight minus-fistedness week after week, decides to take action. After the service, as the congregation files out, he stops here. He doesn't yell or condemn you publicly. His method is quieter, more insidious, and in some ways, more permanent. He leads you to a large, dark wooden board hanging on the wall near the church entrance. It is the shame board, or sinner's slate. On this board, the churchwards write the names of those who have committed public, moral transgressions that fall outside the scope of secular law. There might be the name of a known drunkard, a suspected adulterer, or a notorious gossip. And today, the priest takes a piece of white chalk, and in large, clear, unmistakable letters, he writes your name. Next to it, he writes your sin for uncharitable heart. There it is, a permanent, public record of your private sin. Every person who enters or leaves the church will see it. Your tenants will see it when they come to pray for a good harvest. The merchants you do business with will see it. Your own family will see it. The punishment is purely psychological. It doesn't cost you a penny. It doesn't cause you physical pain. But it attacks the one thing you value almost as much as your money or reputation as a respectable man. It brands you, not with a hot iron, but with a piece of chalk. This brings us to a wonderfully obscure historical detail, the sluggard-waker. In many churches of this period, keeping the congregation awake during long, droning sermons was a real problem. To combat this, the church would employ an official known as the sluggard-waker. This person had a long pole, and at one end was a brass knob or a fox's tail, and at the other was a feather or a soft brush. If a man fell asleep, he would get a sharp rap on the head with the hard end. If a woman dozed off, she would be gently tickled back to consciousness with the soft end. It's a perfect illustration of the church's role in micromanaging every aspect of public behavior, from charity right down to paying attention during the sermon. The academic debate surrounding this form of shaming focuses on the concept of social currency. In a pre-modern community, a person's reputation, their good name, was their most valuable asset. It was the basis of trust, credit, and social standing. The shame board was a tool that weaponized this social currency. By publicly naming and shaming you, the church was deliberately devaluing your reputation. Historians argue whether this was a tool for genuine moral improvement, encouraging the rich to be more charitable, or if it was a form of ecclesiastical blackmail. The implicit threat was clear: contribute to the church, or we will ruin your good name. It was a power struggle between the economic power of the wealthy and the reputational power of the clergy. You stand there, staring at your name written in stark white on the dark board. It feels more violating than any physical punishment you've endured. The drunkard's barrel could be taken off. The pillory could be washed clean. But this is a stain on your name itself. You, the rich man, the powerful man, have been brought low by a simple piece of chalk. You turn to leave, and you can already feel the weight of the whispers and the sideways glances of your neighbors. A price far higher than any coin you refuse to give. The mortifying sight of your name on the church's shame board dissolves into the background. The quiet, judgmental atmosphere of the parish gives way to a cacophony of banging, sawing, and shouting. You are no longer a wealthy man worrying about his reputation. You are a craftsman, a tradesman, a coppersmith. Your hands, once soft and accustomed to counting coins, are now calloused in straw. Your workshop is your kingdom, a small, cluttered space filled with the tools of your trade: hammers, tongs, handfuls, and sheets of raw copper. You are good at your job. Your pots are sturdy. Your kettles boil quickly, and your work is in high demand. But you are also ambitious to meet the deadlines and take on new orders. You work long hours. You work when the sun is high, and you work when the moon is up. The problem is your workshop is located in a densely packed residential street. While you are hard at work, hammering a stubborn sheet of copper into a beautiful, curved basin, your neighbors are trying to sleep. Your industry is their insomnia. The relentless clang, clang, clang of your hammer, which to you is the sound of productivity and profit, is to them a nightly torment. After weeks of sleepless nights and polite requests that have gone ignored, your neighbors have had enough. A formal complaint is lodged with the town council. Your crime is noise. In a world before zoning laws and industrial parks, the clash between residential life and cottage industries was a constant source of friction. You are a public nuisance, a disturber of the nocturnal peace. The bailiff, our tireless, long suffering friend, pays you a visit. He doesn't bring a mask or a barrel. He doesn't need to. He simply informs you of the council's judgment. Your punishment is a beautiful piece of legal poetry, a perfect inversion of your crime. You, who have forced the sound of your work upon the town at night, will now be forced to display your silence in public. That evening, as the town bell tolls the hour of curfew, the bailiff returns. He orders you to take the tools of your trade, the heavy hammer you were just using, a pair of tongs, and the unfinished copper basin that was the source of the complaint. You are then marched to the very center of the town square, a place that is now dark, empty, and eerily quiet. He instructs you to stand there, holding your tools. You are not chained. You are not locked in a device. You are simply sentenced to stand all night. This punishment, a form of public vigil, was a surprisingly common and elegant solution for this type of offense. You are being punished not with pain, but with stillness and silence. You are forced to endure the very peace you denied to others. You must stand in the cold, in the dark, holding the instruments of your noisy trade. But you are forbidden from using them. They become symbols of your transgression. Their weight a constant reminder of the disturbance you caused. Let's pause for a fashionably quiet piece of history: the night watch. In many medieval and early modern towns, the night was patrolled by a watchman. His job wasn't just to look out for criminals, but also to be the town clock and weatherman. He would walk the streets, calling out the hour and announcing that all is well. This call, known as the cries of the watch, was one of the few sounds legally permitted to break the deep silence of the night. It's a stark contrast to your own illegal hammering. The watchman's noise was a sound of order and security, while yours was a sound of selfish disorder. The academic discussion around this type of punishment often centers on the idea of restorative justice. Unlike purely punitive measures like a fine or a whipping, this punishment attempts to make the offender experience the inverse of their crime, forcing a kind of empathy. By making you endure total silence, the court is theoretically making you understand the value of the peace you shattered. Historians debate how effective this truly was. Was it a sophisticated psychological tool that encouraged social harmony and consideration for one's neighbors? Or was it just a simpler, cheaper alternative to imprisonment? A way to punish someone without having to feed and guard them? Was it about restoring your soul, or just saving the town's money? The hours pass with agonizing slowness. The square is deserted. The moon crawls across the sky. Your arms begin to ache from the weight of the hammer and the copper basin. Your legs grow stiff. The silence is absolute, broken only by the distant cry of the night watchman marking the passing of another hour. It is a profound, deep quiet that you have never appreciated before. You, the maker of noise, are now trapped in an ocean of silence. You stand there, a solitary statue in the moonlight, holding the tools of your trade like a penance, learning the hard way about the value of a good night's sleep. The deep, enforced silence of the town square finally breaks with the first stirrings of dawn. Your arms ache, your legs are numb, but your sentence of stillness is over. You are allowed to return to your workshop, the heavy tools of your trade feeling strangely foreign in your hands. The world of the noisy coppersmith fades, and a new reality takes its place. The air changes from the crisp, cool night to the damp, earthy smell of the forest floor. The sounds of the town are replaced by the rustle of leaves and the distant snap of a twig. You are no longer a craftsman living among neighbors. You are a peasant, the farmer, living on the edge of a great lord's vast estate. Your life is one of back-breaking labor and meager returns. You work the lord's land. You give him a share of your crops, and you survive on what's left. The fields provide you with just enough grain and vegetables to get by. But you crave something more. You crave meat, and the forest, the Lord's personal hunting ground, is teeming with it. Fat deer, plump rabbits, wild boar, but it is all forbidden to you. This is your crime: poaching, driven by hunger and a sense of defiant injustice. You have been sneaking into the Lord's woods at night. You have a simple bow and a few crude arrows, and you are skilled in the art of moving silently. Last night, you were successful. You brought down a small deer, a creature whose meat could feed your family for a week. But as you were carrying it home, you were caught by the Lord's gamekeeper, a man whose sole job is to protect the forest's bounty from people exactly like you. Poaching was considered an incredibly serious crime, far more serious than its modern equivalent. It wasn't just theft of an animal. It was a direct challenge to the Lord's authority and a violation of the deeply entrenched class system. The forest law was brutal. The nobility's exclusive right to hunt was a cornerstone of their power and privilege. To them, a deer was not just an animal. It was a symbol of their status. For a peasant to kill one was an act of insurrection. You are dragged before the Lord's steward for judgment. because this is a crime against the Lord himself. The punishment is not decided by the town bailiff, but by the Lord's own private justice system. You are to be made an example of. You are not fined or imprisoned. Your punishment is, once again, a piece of cruel, symbolic theatre. The gamekeeper brings out the antlers of the very deer you kill. Using leather straps, he fastens them securely to your head. He then ties your hands behind your back. You are now forced to wear the symbol of your crime. You wanted to be the hunter, so they have turned you into the hunted. You are paraded from your village to the gates of the Lord's manor house, a journey of several miles. You are forced to walk, bent over, mimicking the posture of a 4-legged beast. The heavy antlers feel awkward and absurd. They catch on low-hanging branches. You stumble through the woods, a monstrous, human-deer hybrid. Here we find a truly bizarre tidbit from the history of forest law. In some parts of England, under the famously harsh Norman hunting laws, the punishment for killing a stag could be blinding or mutilation. But there were also lesser, stranger punishments. For instance, a commoner caught with a hunting dog like a greyhound in the forest would have the dog lawed or expedited. This meant that a toe or several claws on each of its front paws would be chopped off. The dog would still be able to track and herd, but it would be too slow to ever chase down a swift deer again. It was a brutally pragmatic way of disarming a potential poacher. The academic debate around poaching laws is intense. Were these laws really about preserving game stocks for the nobility sport? Or were they fundamentally to love land, control and peasant subjugation? By forbidding the common people from hunting, the ruling class ensured that the forests remained wild and undeveloped, preserving their private playgrounds. It also kept the peasantry dependent on agriculture and, by extension, on the lords who owned the land. Historians argue that the fight over poaching rights was a central battleground in the long, slow war between the landed aristocracy and the rural poor. Your desire for a deer steak was part of a much larger struggle for resources and freedom. Your humiliating procession ends at the manor gate. You are left there for the day, tied to a post, still wearing the antlers. The Lord and his noble guests might ride past on their way to a legitimate hunt, laughing at the sight of you, the clumsy beast who dared to infringe upon their rights. You are a living trophy, a warning to all other hungry peasants. You are no longer a man. You have been transformed into a symbol of your own transgression, forced to wear the crown of the very creature you unlawfully killed. The heavy, ridiculous weight of the antlers is lifted from your head. The shame of being paraded as a half-minus man, half-minus beast begins to recede, and the memory of the Lord's cold justice melts away with the forest mist. You are no longer a poacher. You are no longer a sinner or a criminal at all. You are just you, and you are standing in a crowd, swept up in a current of pure, unadulterated chaos. The air, once still and silent, is now a riot of sound shouting, jeering, raucous singing, and the discordant braying of horns and banging of pots and pans. This is the Feast of Fools, or perhaps it's Shrove Tuesday, or a local Charivari. The specific name doesn't matter. It is a day of inversion, a time when the world is deliberately turned upside down. The normal rules of conduct are suspended. A peasant is crowned the lord of misrule for the day, and the sacred and the profane mix in a dizzying festive stew. You are no longer a participant in the punishment. You are a spectator, a face in the mob, and the grand parade of all the town's follies is about to begin. The procession turns the corner and heads down the main street, a living river of mockery, and leading the way, you see him, the terrible musician. He has not locked in his Shame Flute today, but he carries it like a scepter, blowing tuneless fanfares while the crowd roars with laughter. He has embraced his role. He is the official minstrel of this chaotic court. Behind him, pulled in a cart, is the dishonest baker, furiously kneading a lump of dough that seems impossibly light, throwing handfuls of flour at the crowd. They are followed by the drunkard, no longer trapped in a barrel but rolling a large, empty one ahead of him, occasionally stopping to try and drink from the bungle to the delight of the onlookers. It's a procession of all the ghosts you have been. You see the gossiping neighbor and the sharp minor-tongued Scold, chained together and forced to lead a pig wearing a woman's bonnet. You see the vain merchant. His clothes a ridiculous parody of high fashion, with absurdly long shoe minus points made of straw that he keeps tripping over. The fraudulent quack doctor is there, too, his necklace of bottles replaced by a string of onions, which he offers to people as a cure for sadness. Each sinner, whose punishment you once intimately experienced, is here. Their individual shames, once isolating and painful, have been woven together into a shared, communal spectacle. The pain has been temporarily transformed into performance. This is the Charivari in its purest form, a weird and wonderful piece of folk justice. It was a noisy, public shaming ritual directed by the community itself, often without any official sanction from the church or state. While it could target criminals, it was most often used to police social norms. A man who was beaten by his wife, an old widower who married a young woman, or anyone who was seen as behaving unconscionable and might find a mob of people banging pots and pans outside their house all night, demanding a finer food or drink to make them go away. It was the community's immune system, loudly and obnoxiously attacking anything it perceived as a social infection. You see the adulterous couple, forced to ride backwards on a donkey, a classic symbol of foolishness and cuckoldry. You see the student, wearing a giant paper dun scalp, being quizzed by the Lord of Misrule, who accepts only the most ridiculous romances. Even the poacher is there, a man with a single deer antler tied to his forehead, chasing another man dressed as a noble, who squeals in mock terror. Every shame you have endured is being enacted, but its sting has been drawn. Today, it is not about justice, it is about laughter. The great academic debate about these rituals of inversion is whether they were a force for stability or a catalyst for change. Did the Feast of Fools act as a social safety valve, allowing the common people to mock their betters and vent their frustrations in a controlled environment, so they could return to their subservient roles the next day, refreshed and compliant? Or was it a dangerous school for rebellion? Day, when the people realized their collective power, when the mockery could turn into real anger, and the parade could escalate into a riot. Was a Lord of Misrule a harmless jester, or was he practicing to be a revolutionary leader? The parade reaches its chaotic, noisy climax in the main square. The energy of the crowd is electric, a mixture of glee and the strange, wild cruelty. You watch as all these figures, all these echoes of your past self, converge in a swirling mess of laughter and noise. The bad musician, the cheating baker, the silenced gossip, the humbled merchant, the shamed penitent, they are all here. They are the collected sins of the town, brought out into the light, not for punishment, but for one last, glorious, chaotic airing. It is the town looking at its own reflection in a funhouse mirror, and howling with laughter at the distortion. You are part of that crowd, your voice one of the hundreds in the roar, a witness to the final, bizarre ceremony where shame itself is put on parade. The roar of the crowd finally fades, not into silence, but into a soft, gentle hum. The raucous energy of the festival melts away, leaving only a quiet warmth behind. The faces in the mob, once sharp and clear, now blur at the edges, their features softening into the indistinct shapes of a dream. You are no longer in the square. You are drifting. The cobblestones beneath your feet have given way to something soft and yielding, a path made of memory and moonlight. All the people you were tonight, the musician, the gossip, the baker, the fool are walking with you, but they are no longer separate. They are just echoes, whispers on the edge of sleep, the weight of the shame flute, the cold bite of the bridle, the sting of the brand. All these sensations are gone, replaced by a feeling of profound lightness, as if you are floating on a slow, dark river. The river carries you past scenes from your journey, that they are like watercolor paintings left out in the rain, their colors running together, their sharp lines dissolving. The bailiff is there, but H.E.S., not angry or weary anymore. He simply nods, his job done. The lord of the manor tips his hat. The cheering crowds are now just silent silhouettes against a fading sky. Every harsh edge has been smoothed away. The story is over. and all that remains is the feeling of its journey, a gentle current pulling you further and further into the quiet darkness. You feel your own breathing, slow and steady, a gentle rhythm in the deep peace of the night. There is nothing left to see, nothing left to do, just this slow, easy drift into the soft embrace of slumber. The end of the article. Good night.